Hi everyone, welcome back to the show. In this episode, we are joined by Thagard, who is the author of Endgame, The Evolution of Consciousness, as we discuss and explore metaphysics, quantum physics, and their connection with spirituality. Before that though, this episode is brought to you by Riverside. Riverside is an online studio platform designed to record, edit and share high quality podcasts that are built for growth from day one. It's the platform that I use to record, edit and share Raising Consciousness, this podcast. Powered by AI, you can record in 4K video or from your phone and automatically remove filler words such as ums, as, you knows, and many other different speech patterns. Built for human conversations, Riverside makes it super easy to start a podcast. That sounds great. Ready to start your podcast? Go ahead and check out the link in the show note description to learn more about Riverside and get a 15% discount off a paid subscription. Now, let's dive into today's episode with Christian. Christian, welcome to Raising Consciousness today. How are you doing?
Thank you, Luke. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
First question for you. Who are you and what do you do?
Who am I? I've got about 3 levels to talk about that on. The first is the big picture, because I'm a big picture kind of explorer. Who am I? I am, as you are, and as every one of your listeners is, a little bit of source God, having an adventure, playing a game, and weaving a story. Now, okay, we'll come in a little closer on that. I'm sure there's a lot to unpack right there about this wonderful game that we're involved in. I'm somebody who 38 years ago got rudely woken up from my ordinary day-to-day, this is the mundane physical world, and it was a wake-up call, a look over here, this reality isn't what you think it is, it's far more interesting, and I've been on a deep dive for 38 years as a explorer of metaphysics and spirituality, and it's been a very enjoyable exploration. And most of that time overlapped with practicing law in the commercial, corporate, financial field, which was an interesting combination. I may have set some kind of record for longest time spent in the spiritual closet. But 3 years ago, I retired from the practice of law and did what I'd wanted to do for a long time. I published a book called Earth Game, The Evolution of Consciousness. And several months ago, I received an inspiration to, actually the words in meditation were, by the way, you will write a second book. It'll be called Earth Game, The Next Level. And I responded, okay, what's it about? And then it opened up to me. It was going to be about multidimensionality and quantum physics as the gateway to multidimensionality. And it was a whole lot of fun. On another level, who am I? Well, I'm a really logical, down-to-earth kind of guy. I walk in the woods daily. I'm a Virgo rising. I'm a Enneagram 1, if that means anything to you. I'm a pretty grounded guy, but I'm somebody who needs to understand to make sense of things, which a lot of people, I think, can relate to. I'm a bit like the 4-year-old who was always asking why. Well, I've never stopped asking why. And to sum it up, I guess I'm a spiritual or metaphysical explorer, and I've made some maps that I think are worth sharing with anyone who's interested in them. Does that give you a picture of who I am? On the accent, I'm from Alberta, Canada.
Amazing. Awesome. Why does the work that you do with writing the books, etc., why does that matter? And the topics that you talk about. So for someone, a listener who's clicked on this video on YouTube, this podcast on YouTube, or, listening to it in their favorite podcast app, why should they stay around to listen to our conversation today?
That's also a good question. Well, there's different ways you can play this game. You can play it and I used the metaphor in my recent book of you can play it inside the jar. You can play it in 3 dimensions of space and one of time. Or you can reach outside that jar and actually become aware of all the multidimensional stuff that's going on all around you, the real world of consciousness, the world of metaphysics, the world of spirituality. And that gets really exciting. And you can realize, and we can get into some of this, you get tools that you don't have if you're just trying to move particles of matter around, or worse yet, trying to move people around, trying to persuade everyone to behave the way you want them to behave, or trying to do everything perfectly right with your nutrition, with your exercise, with your health, so that your world works. Well, it works in ways a little more mysterious than that. We can demystify that. But practically speaking, you can make your life work better. You can achieve a level of mastery that you're not going to find just in the world of matter. So on the masthead of my book, it says explorations beyond space-time. Well, my thesis after 38 years of being an explorer is exploring beyond space-time will make your life work a lot better than all the hard work will ever do.
For those that aren't familiar, what is metaphysics and quantum physics?
Well, let me start with, I wrote an article on my blog on my website just a little while ago, the difference between metaphysics and spirituality, because we kind of toss around those terms. They sort of sound like the same thing, but they're different. Okay, so let's parse metaphysics. Meta means beyond or after. So it's what comes after or beyond physics. What's the terrain of physics? The terrain of physics is 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time, Einstein's space-time. So if you're approaching from the direction of metaphysics, you're going, ooh, all right, what's after? What's beyond those 4 dimensions of space-time? And that takes you into multidimensionality. Okay, now let's come at it from the opposite side. From spirituality, it's a sensing some sort of divinity. You can call that the creator, consciousness, source, or God. I use in my book source God quite advisedly, because if I say God, you probably get a mental picture of an old man with a beard. That's a swing and a miss. That's a no. And if I just say source, it sounds a little bit like artificial intelligence, almost an amped up chat GPT, and that's not quite the message. So the best I could do was use source God to sort of capture both notions. Okay, coming back to spirituality, you get a sense of there's something there. There's something of that divinity, and you want to pull it down. Now, here's the magic. You're coming to the same bridge, whichever direction you're coming from. You're coming from spirituality down to the bridge with science, or you're coming from science moving towards spirituality. And it's on that bridge, the bridge between spirit and matter, which is such a fundamental duality in this reality. That's where the magic happens for you. Now, I think you had a question beyond the difference between metaphysics and spirituality that I probably lost in the process there.
No worries. No, it made sense what you were talking about there. So I think my camera's gone. 1 second. So interesting. Do you think like the average, I don't like to use that word, but like the average person walking down the street, so what
is the average person interested in this?
Yeah. So like what misconceptions do you think the average person has when, like, if they come across this podcast and they're like, what is all of this and what does that mean for my day-to-day life? I guess that's the point I'm trying to get at.
You can play this game, what I call inside the jar. You can play it in space-time without any regard for metaphysics or spirituality. You can play it in 3 dimensions of space and 1 at a time. And it's still a fun game. It's a good game. It's designed to be a good game, but you're under the fog of illusion, and you've got amnesia about who you really are, and you won't find it. Or you can step outside that jar and go, whoa, there's a whole different game to be played. And for most people, they're asleep. And then there's a growing number of people who are, whoa, there's something else going on here. There's something more going on here. And I want to touch it. I want to understand it. And then there's a whole generation, your generation, if I can make an assumption, that there's something out there beyond your phone, beyond your device, beyond technology as God, that there's more going on here. I can feel it. And your generation, it's interesting to watch. And I'm not an expert on it, but I do have a 29-year-old son that I hang out with sometimes.
Same age as me.
Pardon me?
Same age as me.
Oh, interesting. You're looking for something. I mean, ask yourself, why do you do a podcast on raising consciousness? Where did that crawl out of? Your whole generation, you haven't bought into the climb the corporate ladder, create the material success. Yeah, you've got to do all those things. You've got to pay the bills. But somehow it's not totally lighting you up. There's something more. Well, I think your generation is going to wake up en masse, or enough that there's going to be a fascinating tipping point, and it's already happening. It's probably why you called a podcast Raising Consciousness, because you know, hey, there's something, I don't know what it is, but there's something about Luke's story that's going to take you down that path. And here's the other thing. A lot of people, whoa, metaphysics, I don't want to go there. That's weird stuff. My 38 years of exploring, if it has taught me anything, is, holy cow, this stuff is fun. It works. It's practical. And it just lets you really, really enjoy being physically alive here on Earth.
So how do we practically apply it, if that's the correct question to even ask? Like you said there, it's practical. So can you give us some examples of like how it's practical?
Yeah. The first is an understanding that there's more going on here than just moving matter around. That thought somehow is having actual impact. This is why you have people do a deep dive into mindfulness. Why is thought so important? Is thought only important so that it'll tell you what actions to take, or is it doing something on its own? Old quote from Buddha, you become what you think. You've probably heard thoughts become things. You've probably heard the law of attraction. Well, why? How is it that thought, consciousness, imagination is actually impacting what shows up in your reality? Because I assure you it is. Now, you know that your thoughts don't directly manipulate matter. You can take a spoon and try to bend it with your mind, and you won't get very far. There's an intermediation, which is where that whole world of multidimensionality and quantum physics points to, and which you can put to use in, and I'll have, as we get a little bit further into this, a very practical suggestion of how you put it to work for you every single day in every way.
Can we define some of the terms? So we've got metaphysics, multidimensionality, what was the other one? Quantum physics. Like, can we define these terms for the listeners?
Sure. I've already sort of tackled metaphysics. Multidimensionality, well, it's simple enough in this sense. People understand 3 dimensions of space, length, width, and one of time. Okay, what's beyond that? And what's interesting is our scientists have said there's got to be more dimensions. String theory, it kind of hit a dead end, but an M theory said, whoa, the math only works if there are 10 or 11 dimensions. And so what do our scientists do? They go looking for them on the basis they must be really small or really curled up. Well, you're still looking for additional dimensions within space-time. Here's the catch. Our brains are designed to be able to register or perceive only in 4 dimensions, three of space, 1 of time. But there's more going on in that. Our science sort of hints towards that. Let me jump to quantum physics, because it's this beautiful doorway or gateway where I probably read 20, 25 books on quantum physics. I'm not sure I fully understood any of them. I did not have scientific credentials. I certainly do not understand the math. And don't even try to. But if quantum physics ultimately tells you anything, it's, to me, after all the study, there should be a great big neon flashing sign that says, when you go into quantum physics, multidimensionality this way, metaphysics required. And yet scientists keep looking for the explanations and the answers within 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time. A classic example would be to incorrectly assert that, okay, Newtonian physics and which is classical physics, and relativity, that applies at the scale of large objects. And quantum physics, we'll just move that over. It applies with things that are microscopic. No, that's not it at all. Quantum physics is pointing you to multidimensionality. I won't try to do a science lecture, but I'll hit just a couple of quick basics on quantum physics without getting too deep into it, just so anyone who isn't familiar with the subject matter will have a notion of what I'm talking about. Most people will have heard of Schrodinger's cat. It arose from a 1935, so a long time ago, conversation between Edwin Schrodinger and Albert Einstein. And the thought experiment, which is been proven out by physicists many, 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 many times. If you have a cat in a box and a radioactive isotope, which has a 50% chance of decaying and killing the cat, you won't know till you open the box whether the cat is alive or dead, 50% chance. What quantum physics demonstrates is that until you open the box, the cat is both alive and dead. Now that's a mind boggler, okay? But no stranger and it's the act of observing that determines whether the cat is alive or dead. But is that any different from quantum computers where a bit is both a 1 and a 0? How can a bit be both a yes and a no? Similarly, a double slit experiment where a photon goes through one of two slits depending on whether it's observed. And if it's not observed, it's a wave and basically goes through both. So the same notion of superposition tells you, whoa, there's something going on here that is a little different from what we learned about physics. Even the probabilistic nature of matter. Remember those pictures you probably saw them in science of electrons orbiting around the nucleus of an atom? Well, it's not like that at all. They're actually popping in and out of existence. So again, it's not what it appears to be. A very practical aspect of that is quantum tunneling. You can look that one up on Wikipedia, where matter can pass through solid barriers sometimes. And because it sometimes happens, we have nuclear fusion on the sun that gives us light and life. And without quantum tunneling, there'd be no life. There'd be no nuclear fusion on the sun, and therefore no light would here. So everything about quantum physics points to there's something going on here that cannot be explained by 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time. All right, so let's jump into what are these other dimensions? If it's length, width, depth, describe them for me. I can't. Here's the challenge. And the challenge of writing a book about multidimensionality is, by definition, the linear language that we speak in and that our brains are versed in can't get there. We can't describe it. But I'll tell you how you can get into multidimensionality is meditation. And I think that's the magic of meditation. Why does everybody say meditation is wonderful? It is, by the way. It's because we get to cross into the multidimensionality. How? Because we step beyond the limits of the physical brain, which is supposed to be fooled by the illusion. It's supposed to be fooled into thinking there's 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time, when there's so much more going on. Let me give you a practical example of multidimensionality in case I'm boggling anyone's mind. Love. How do you explain love in terms of particles? Well, you can't. You can, in one particular subset of love, I guess, the biochemical madness of falling in love, which is a wonderful thing. You could argue, and materialist scientists would argue that, well, that's just chemical processes. But what's causing the chemical processes? There's something about love where you're seeing beyond the illusion of separation, and you're sensing a connection. That's my definition of love, by the way, is sensed connection. Whether it's love for a significant other, or love for your work, love for the planet, love for trees, love for a pet, love for your children. It's all the same. It's that sense connection. So love's one example. Another is any kind of intuition. When you walk into a room and you go, whoa, I don't like what are you picking up on? Well, it's all around you. See, it's not that you leave this 4-dimensional reality and go live in a multidimensional reality. You're already there. The only difference is, are you aware of it? Are you aware of all the non-physical stuff that you can't see with your physical eyes is going on? Now, let me see if I can really focus this into a practical example. People who study metaphysics or spirituality often talk about frequency or vibration or resonance. Now, those words are always limited for use in describing multidimensionality in the sense that they all have defined scientific meanings. And when we use them in a metaphysical context, we're not using the scientific meanings, but we kind of know what we mean when we talk about the frequency of thoughts or the vibration, or what are you resonating with. I kind of put those 3 together because, and I use the expression quantum signal. What are you putting out? What are you emitting at any time? What's the quality of your thought? What's your signal? And I'll give you an example. If your thoughts are, I need money. I desperately need money. I don't know if I'll pay my rent or mortgage. Please, universe, send me money. Please send me money, send me money. What are you broadcasting? You're broadcasting shortage of money, and the universe, which I'll use I like to use the term the universe as the machinery, even though it's not machinery on which this whole game or this whole adventure runs. It will match my order. Think of it as Amazon, okay? I'm sending orders with every single thought that I send out to the great Amazon in the sky, known as the universe. Are they feelings of well-being? Are they feelings of love? Are they feelings of abundance? Or are they feelings of scarcity and fear or anger? Am I triggered? And whatever I send out there, those orders get filled. Now, you're starting to see how this could actually matter. Now, we think that it's all physical causes delivering. And yes, there are physical causes. In my analogy, yes, the Amazon van does bring the thing to your door, but why does it bring that particular thing to your door? Because that's what you ordered. And what you're ordering up all day long is your thoughts and the quality of your thoughts. Now, this gets even better. So this gets pretty easy. This gets really, really simple. Well, it doesn't get easy. It gets simple. The quality of your thoughts is going to, over time, determine the quality of your experience here in what I call Earth Game. It's simple, but it's not easy because most people aren't even aware of the thoughts they're sending out. Aren't even aware that they have a regular pattern of saying life's not fair, or the politicians are doing this, or the government's messing this up, or you're in that state of trigger, or you're not even thinking your own thoughts because you're too busy reading the news 6 hours a day, or just whatever comes in on your device. And so, again, if you want, play the game inside the jar. But what you find yourself doing is you're reacting to everything out there. Not a lot of empowerment in that. You're reacting, and you're trying to do everything perfect so that you don't make any missteps. Now, you can use quantum signal, and I detail this in my book, if you're broadcasting the beautiful stuff, you don't even have to worry about what's coming because you know it's going to be good.
How do we become more aware of the thoughts that we're having?
We just practice it. Well, there's some people call it mindfulness. Just practice. Yeah. Sorry, I missed the most important thing. The quality of your thoughts is very, very easy. This is the beautiful part. You can know in any moment the quality of your thoughts by how do they feel. That's the magic. You get the instant feedback. Let's take something that it triggers you. Okay. And am I immune to being triggered? Of course not. So anybody out there can think, yeah, I know what triggers me, whether it's whatever. When you're triggered, you're in that state. What are you ordering up? Now, for me, I'm still going to get triggered, but I'm thinking, whoa, I got to let that thought pass through because I'm not going to like what gets delivered in response to the order that I'm presently submitting to this great machinery of the universe. You follow that part because this is the. I know one of your themes is practical spirituality. There's practical spirituality. Now, let me take that another step. If you can go what I call beyond outside the jar to what I call there is no jar, which is a play on the movie The Matrix, if you're familiar with it, to the there is no spoon line from the Matrix. If you can get right outside the game and actually sense the oneness that we're all part of, that's a beautiful, beautiful quantum signal. And if you carry that with you, and if you bring that into the game, you're going to like what it orders up. And the beauty is you don't even have to worry about the future or what's coming because you know I'm broadcasting good stuff. I'm sending out good stuff. Whatever comes is going to be just fine. My ego won't like it because my ego will be looking for certainty and rather than the unknown, but that's not really the point.
Do you think that we can control our thoughts? Because like sometimes I have a thought or maybe I don't, and then like I've kind of realized I can choose to think the thought or just like let it go, and I kind of refer to it as like the passing clouds of my mind kind of thing. That so something might happen, I might have a thought and then realize it's not necessarily the thought that I want to have, like 5 years ago, would be completely different. I would like react to it, right? But like through the practice of mindfulness, meditation, etc., I've kind of allowed it to, not all the time, I'm not perfect, but sometimes I'm able to, when I'm my most conscious self, allow it to kind of pass. So do you feel like, can we actually control the actual thoughts that we have, or is it the practice of allowing them to pass, as I said there, like passing clouds of the mind, while we upgrade the quality of our thoughts? Like, how does that, what words of wisdom do you have there? We'll get back talking to Christian in just one moment, but before we do so, I would like to take a quick break to mention Soma Breath. Soma Breath is a holistic school and community with no single guru, where you get to learn a range of pranayama breathing techniques and discover the power of breath work tailored to your specific needs. The thing that I love about Soma is that it combines ancient wisdom with modern science, which is very fitting for this podcast, to help promote overall wellness and longevity, reduce stress and anxiety, and achieve holistic health. Through the power of breathwork and meditation, I've been able to experience a lot of the profound states and dive into the world of quantum physics and metaphysics and spirituality through these practices. From their online courses to memberships, live classes, certification programs, and everything in between, you have everything you need to learn the power of breathwork and meditation and improve your health with a like-minded community right by your side. You can get started on your Soma Breath journey today by visiting the link in the show note description below and experiencing the transformation for yourself. But now, let's get back into today's episode.
A little bit of both. One of my favorite quotes is from the founder of Atari. It was the best games are easy to play and difficult to master. Well, that sums up what we're about here. Anybody can be in this game as a human and walk around on the earth. But to master it, you'll spend a lifetime mastering it. But you can always think a slightly better quality thought in any instance where you're being triggered. Can you kick right out of, if you're terrified? No, but you can, or at least come back to it. Don't stay stuck in it. Don't stay in the anger that just eats you up year after year. So mindfulness, being aware of your thoughts, the quality of them, do they feel good? And here's the other thing. We think that we have to be realistic. Well, you kind of don't. You can actually send out in your imagination what your life, let's say you're hopelessly lonely. Well, what's my life going to feel like when I've got wonderful people all around me and all the love and relationships that I want? And just bask in that, in meditation ideally. And now you're pulling that in. Or if you're completely unfit and you want to be fit, you can just look in the mirror and say, I'm disgustingly fat and out of shape, and that'll order up more of the same. Or you can get that mental picture of, okay, what am I going to look like when I'm my target weight and my spectacular fitness? It's not quite cheating the system, but there is truth to the old line that the beatings will continue until morale improves. You've got to jump out of the thought pattern first. And that's very counterintuitive for most of us, because you think, well, I'll put on my happy face when my life works. No, your life will work when you put on your happy face. Not in a way that you're conning it, because you can't con the vibration, but you've got to get to that space where you're actually tuning, like tuning to a frequency, like tuning to a radio station that you actually like the sound of. And meditation's a great place for that, because you can go into that space and you can always get to a calmer, at least to a neutral space, and then lift it up into some beautiful stuff. And then you can bring that back into your world. Does it work? I think it does.
What would you say to those who say that meditation doesn't work for me?
If you say meditation doesn't work for you?
Yeah, there's kind of some, there's sectors of, yeah.
I know why meditation doesn't work for people. It's because you got a powerful brain, a powerful computer that is going to run. And most people don't get there. They don't get into the meditation, because the second they close their eyes and take the obligatory deep breaths, in jumbles 1,000 thoughts. So the punchline to a cartoon I saw recently was, I can meditate for half a second. I call it thinkitating. Some people call it monkey brain, but it's going to jabber away. So that's why all the techniques with meditation I think, tend to be focused on How do you occupy that physical brain so it gets out of the way, so who you really are? Because you're not just your physical brain, your consciousness is more, but you got to busy it. Breathing is good. Breathing is good. I'll give just the simplest technique that I usually start down with is as I'm breathing in and breathing out, when lifting my energy up from my spine, up to the top of my head and back around, I lift up to the heart center, the fourth chakra, a single drop of golden light, I imagine. Just a single drop of golden light. Now, on the next breath I go to the pineal, the third eye, the sixth chakra, which, by the way, interestingly, is where the pineal is exactly where ayahuasca, magic mushrooms, and LSD all go to work. I haven't used them because I don't need to, because I can go straight there. Drop that little silver light. Now, the next time up, drop a golden light and a silver light, one drop at your heart and at your third eye, one gold and silver, and at the same time, now your brain's pretty busy just holding that. So you're like flying a helicopter now, because you've got to move in the breath, and you've got to now expand the two lights, the gold and the silver, until they expand into each other and start to create this little filigreed pattern of gold and silver woven together. Usually when I get there, my brain gives up and says, whoa, I'm just going to look at that. And now I move into working through the chakras, and then I go wherever I want to go, and the chakras, to me, if you're familiar with them, I think they're gateways to multidimensionality. So as an end in itself, this is fun stuff. Now, I meditate with my darling dog every morning. She just curls up next to me. And as soon as I hit that spot where the energy is really rising, she stands up and licks me on the face, because she just gets a rush out of it. So if you don't think it's real, how is she telling? How does she know the exact moment that it's starting to take off? And then I go all kinds of different places and have all kinds of different conversations, and it's a hoot. And now, does that mean you don't want to be in the physical world? No, it makes the physical world more fun. I mean, I walk in the woods an hour or so every single day, and it's exactly what I want to be doing. I have a very happy dog. So don't give up on meditation, because it's your window into multidimensionality. It's where you're going. Whether you get there in the next year or two or in this lifetime, that's up to you. That's your choice. None of this is obligatory. I'm not selling a lifestyle here. I'm not looking for followers. This map or this exploration that I was thrown into many years ago. It's pretty sweet, and it feels good. And frankly, your life works pretty sweet. And that's what everybody's looking for, right? Or you can keep playing the game inside the jar, bashing away at matter, and you'll have some wins and some losses, but you'll be reacting to what goes on around you.
Why do you think in society, there's this kind of perception of spirituality, maybe even a lot of the topics we're talking about, that is classed as quote unquote like woo-woo, and yeah, I don't know if you've kind of come across that, but
I love that question. I will not use that expression that you referred to. And here's why, okay? And this is where I think my lane is and what my role is, because at this point, I have no needs to meet. I'm just trying to be of service here. I think I'm a logic-seeking missile. The room in my brain for cognitive dissonance is pretty darn small. I got to make sense of things. And if this stuff makes sense to me, if I'm saying, okay, there's enough logic to this, there's enough understanding that I can just keep exploring from, that not only is it not crazy, it'll actually make you feel saner than you've ever been, and it'll make your life make sense. You'll understand who you are. You'll understand your own story, that some of it was written and established long before you parachuted into this reality, and some of it is for you to make up and make your choices and decisions through free will along the way. You just get a different perspective, and you'll play the game at a different level. You don't have to. If you prefer to just try to do everything physically right, but I think there's a more elegant way. That's a lot of fun. Play with it and see where it takes you.
What are some more practical ways that we can apply a lot of the wisdom that you've kind of shared today?
Well, it probably messed you up already, because now you're going to be thinking about what you're thinking for the next few days. You'll be very conscious of your thoughts. And that's a start right there. Ooh, I'm triggered. Ooh, I'm in a state of, I'm upset, I'm agitated. What am I ordering up? Fortunately, there's a time lag, so it doesn't get you right away, which is, again, understand this illusion that it's so easy to get caught up in. We're supposed to start out being caught up in. It's brilliantly designed. You can't come here to this reality unless you agree to amnesia, that you won't remember who you are. And you also have to accept the illusion of separation, which fortunately your brain is wired to do that and your ego does that for you. It's me and then everybody else is separate from me. Well, you realize, holy cow, we're all connected. It's all part of a one. Interesting thing on that. I realize this is a tangent, but when you dive into a whole bunch of different spiritual paths looking for, goodness, well, how do I make sense of things? And they all look like they're all over the map. But after a while, you look closer and you start to climb with them and you realize the lexicons are different, the terminology is different, but they're all ultimately talking about the same thing. And as the climb continues and you get further up the mountain, you realize there's just the one mountain. And everybody arrives at the same notion that we're all part of this source God, pretending to be separate, pretending to have amnesia, so that we can play this fabulous game and experience this spectacular physical world that we're in. Now, how's that for an attitude to take into your daily living? It's not about all the things that we have to do, but they're not quite so life and death. I mean, even a life on earth isn't life and death. At the end of it, even if it's a horrible life, it'll be like watching a horror movie for an hour and a half and then walking out of the theater in one piece, maybe a little shook up, but you're fine. Think of it as your every lifetime is like a movie. There's a story of you. Even think about, why are we so obsessed with stories? Well, because we're living one, and humanity's living one. Why
Do you
are we
think
so obsessed with games? We're playing a game.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think our ancestors and like I refer to them as like ancient cultures understood this better than like we do in the modern world, if that makes sense? Like just understanding, or through the podcast and conversation that I'm having, and like with the podcast, trying to look at a lot of these subjects in health as well through the lens of ancient wisdom, but also modern science. When I look through the lens of like ancient wisdom, ancient cultures, and our ancestors, it seems like they intuitively knew this and maybe like just practiced it more than we do in the modern world. And maybe that's because like we're so busy and caught up in the 9 to 5, climbing the corporate ladder. We'd love to get your thoughts on that.
I'd say yes. When we make technology as God, don't get me wrong, I love my Spotify as much as the next guy. But when we make technology as God, and we become really, really smart, we lose the intuitive brain. We lose the heart brain. We lose the intuitive brain. We don't sense things. We lose the multidimensional is what we lose. The other factor, and I don't want to open a whole another can of worms, is there's pretty good evidence that the history of humanity is way longer than our history books pretend it is. And there were some interactions with civilizations that were far more advanced, and that is largely what gets remembered. But that's a different exploration. I'm fascinated by it. But I understand we're really being watched because we're going through this fabulous awakening. We're at this point of, will they wake up? Will they wake up? Will they see it? Will they see through the illusion? And yes, I think the answer is yes, we will. How quickly? I don't know. It's up to your generation. You're going to be the tipping point. How soon are you going to, and then you'll all wake up all at once and you'll say, we did it. Well, great.
Are you hopeful that as a species, humanity will wake up?
Yeah, I don't know why, but ever since I was I've always had a strong optimism for the future of humanity. Even when we were told nuclear war was going to happen, and as we edge toward it again, I still have that optimism, which tells me that the next 2 or 3 years are going to be really, really interesting.
So it's interesting you mentioned kind of war there, because especially when we talk about kind of, I was listening to a podcast earlier today that kind of actually is in alignment with this in terms of when we talk about spirituality, maybe the universe, God. Some sectors might say, well, if there is a quote unquote God or like the universe, why would they allow these bad things on Earth to happen? Like, is that what would do you have any thoughts around that?
I've written some articles on my blog about that, about even why do we have like horror stories? Well, for one thing, free will. For another thing, It's a game, and everybody comes out of this in one piece. There's no judgment day. And it feels from outside Earth game, in the more real outside Earth game, it's like a blink, even though to us a lifetime feels like a pretty long time. Would we have the option to just blow ourselves up? Yes. But by all accounts, by many accounts, and I believe it, we've kind of made the cut. We've made the turn. And I think some of the darkness in our world right now is just showing itself so that we will go, no, that is not who we are. That is not where we're going. So I expect to see in my lifetime a much more peaceful world. Will it be perfect? Will it be utopian? No. But it's going to be really, really interesting. And as people wake up, because they're going to get tapped on the shoulder, and it'll be as I had my wake up call at roughly the age you are now, it isn't optional, and it can be a little, whoa, what, I've lost my bearings. Well, okay, let me explain this to you in a way that's not frightening. You're fine. It's all good. Look over here, and you're going to like it. And that's basically what it said to you. You're gonna like the next few years, even though I know your generation looks out at the future and goes, I don't know about this.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting times. What do you think lies beyond like us being human, like the human condition?
What lies beyond the lifetime? Sure, happy to talk about that. It's basically you get up out of the movie theater and you go home. Now, what happened? Now, there's a lobby on the way out, and I get into this in detail in my book, Earth Game: The Next Level. There's a life review, which is the coolest thing. You experience in the timelessness outside Earth Game. You re-experience every moment of your life, and you experience it also through the perspective of every single person you interacted with and the effect that you had on them. There's no judgment. You're back in that place of remembering who you really are, but you're just reviewing it. And you're feeling everything you felt and everything everyone around you felt as a result of you. And that's going to be the coolest experience. And then you go back into the soup of the one who spun you. If you think of your physical body as the avatar in the game, and they spun a little bit of their consciousness, pretending to be separate, but not really being separate, as the real player inside the game, using this physical avatar to motor around, well, you go back to them. It's brilliant. And it's just easy to be in awe of it. I try to start my day with the affirmation, another day in Earth Game. I'm having an adventure. I'm playing a game. I'm weaving a story. I'm an actor in a grand play. I've got the story of my life, and I've got my little role to play in the story of humanity on Earth. And if I can live my life just in awe of it, because it is an awesome design, and it is so designed. Let me just slide from that a little. If anybody's coming from the polarity from the pole of science, and they look at all the coefficients, all the calculations that had to be exactly what they were for the Big Bang to actually turn into life on planet Earth, you have to think, holy cow, this was designed. This was planned. This was deliberate. There is no room in here for a meaningless, random collage of nothingness.
Who would design it?
You're here on purpose. And in fact, I'm told that many of the beings outside Earth Game wouldn't dream of coming here because it's too scary, it's too dark, it's too dense, it's too violent. You have amnesia. Horrible things happen. Horrible things do happen. This is for the PhD students. This is for the brave ones. This is for the adventurers. If you can think of yourself not as the small, insignificant, failed being created that has remedial work to do, but rather you're on this grand adventure because you are pretty brave and pretty daring. Well, that's a different perspective on life, and you've already just upshifted your quantum signal majorly the moment you let in a single thought. Like, do you really want to think good thoughts? Do you want to think good thoughts, quantum signal? Think about, just dive into the nature of this reality, and you can't look at it the same again. I can't look at another human the same again. And now that I realize, my God, they're also a little bit of source God. Maybe they're lost. Maybe they've completely amnesiac. They have no clue of how this place works, but they're my co-player in this game. They're my teammate. How can I help them along, or at least not be judgmental or harsh about them.
What do you think the role of the ego is?
The ego? Okay, I got a chapter on that in my book, and I got an article on my website called Repurposing Ego. Ego is a construct of the physical brain. It's separation personified. And it tries to figure out, it's limited to 3 dimensions of space and one at a time. It is absolutely the physical you. And if you let it run the show, it will try to, A, create safety because it fears everything. B, it will try to gain recognition. And C, it will try to get love. And those are all the great ego traps. Now, what do you do with ego? And I talk to my ego regularly because it's my partner. It's not something to be dissolved or hated or locked away. Ego is my interface with physicality. It's the one that looked at the birch trees in the woods this morning and just with a sense of, and just really detailed the beauty of it. You need ego to smell the roses, to taste the strawberry, to hear the music in concert. But you want ego in the now, not doing the planning, not running the show. Anyway, if anyone's interested, read the article or even in my book.
Do you think a lot of people have a hard time with the ego not running the show?
They don't know any better. They hear this voice inside that says, I'm afraid. Or they're tapped on the shoulder and called to do something that seems strange and unknown to them, something wacky like having a podcast on raising consciousness. And ego says, I don't know where that goes. I'm terrified. Well, you need to have that conversation with ego and say, it's okay. It's not, it feels right. Therefore it is. Ego always wants certainty, and you never get certainty when you're when you're playing out your story. It's always taking you into the unknown. So it's understandable that most people would be pulled by ego or they think the object of the game is to get rich and famous. Well, it kind of isn't. I can't imagine at the end of your lifetime, you'd go, okay, how much adulation and fame did I generate? No, that's not really the point of it. In fact, fame is just a price you pay for being able to impact many. But I see it as a price to pay.
Christian, what's one thing that we haven't spoken about that we should have spoken about, the things that we have spoken about, if that makes sense?
Actually, I kind of like the way with the things we touched upon. I think we hit the gamut here.
So with that in mind, what would your final message be?
That if anyone feels pulled or wonders, sure, dive in. The water's fine. It won't make you crazy. It won't mess up your life. It'll be the most fun you ever had. You'll have that beautiful feeling like when it comes together, when you see it in a way that you didn't see it before. It'll feel good. Trust it. If you're called. Now, if you're not called, fine. Go ahead. Play the game inside the jar. Move the stuff around at the level of matter. And yet understand that those thoughts of yours, and maybe this is where I should close, those thoughts of yours are ordering things from the equivalent of Amazon. So what are you ordering at every moment? And if you take away nothing but that my thoughts are ordering up for better or for worse, and you know what you're ordering by how it feels. If your thoughts feel good, you're going to like your future.
Thank you so much for your time today and the wisdom that you've shared. I've definitely learned a lot, and yeah, given me food for thought, that's for sure. Where should people go if they want to keep in touch with you, learn more about your work, and of course, get your books?
ChristianThagard.com, and my books are available on Amazon.
Excellent. What's next for you? Are you going to be writing another book? What's next?
I don't know. Well, I posted 4 articles in the last 3 weeks. So when something crawls into my head, I write it, and I'll keep posting articles on my blog. Will I write? I don't know. I show up, I check in meditation, say, okay, universe, I'm showing up for work. What do you got for me? And they'll either say, do this, or no, just go play today. Just go enjoy just go enjoy being on planet Earth. And I'm actually okay with, I have no idea what comes next, but when there's a knock on the door, or when I get an opportunity to say, come on a podcast like yours, which I didn't go looking for, it found me, I'm going to say yes to that. And that's I don't have a 5-year plan. I don't have goals. All I got to do is say yes when there's a knock at the door. That's what getting this game right will do for you. You'll find yourself not driven, but pulled towards what's calling to you. And then your story, whatever it is, can really start to unfold, and you're going to love it. You're already on that. You're going to love it. You can't not be on that path.
No, I'm definitely trying to like embrace the path more of, as you said there, like saying yes and that. But sometimes we fall back into, or at least I certainly do, of like more of this world of like set goals and and I'm trying to like that I definitely embrace more of the world of, I don't know, I call it like flow and notice, like intuition and noticing the signs and saying yes to opportunities and the signs that the universe.
I know this. When you're supposed to, if you're supposed to wake up or go a certain direction and you don't, and you say, no, that's too scary, I'm just not doing it. The universe will come whack you upside the head and you'll end up going that direction anyway. So it all works out. And enjoy the ride, enjoy the game. You're a player in an exciting game here.
Excellent.
And I mean that as part of a double entendre, okay?
Well, Christian, thank you so much for your time. I'll link all of your links and blog and books down in the show notes so people can check them out if they want to learn more about your work and stay in touch.
Sincere thank you.
I hope that you've enjoyed my conversation today with Christian Thagard, as we have been exploring metaphysics, quantum physics, and their connection with spirituality. I don't know about you, but these topics are mesmerizing to me, and I find them very, very fascinating, and actually realized that the conversations I've had in the past on the podcast and this conversation today around these topics are just touching the surface, and there's lots more left to explore. But what about you? What are you taking away from this episode, and what positive changes are you going to make in your life as a result? Please do leave a comment below this episode or review, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or wherever else you get your podcasts from. I do read every single comment and review and appreciate you being here. I look forward to sharing the next episode of the show with you really, really soon. So I will see you then.